Welcome to Nature Travel Boy TV. In this video, we are going to talk about how to travel around Europe by train, so before starting this video, please like this video, and subscribe to our channel for the future updates. Traveling Europe by train is easy, comfortable, scenic and efficient. Compared to flights, your journeys will be easier and more comfortable, plus there's far less risk of being caught with extra charges for luggage or checking in. Most parts of Europe have excellent high-speed networks, and even on slower routes you'll still get amazing views and more space to stretch your legs. Overland travel gives you a great chance to see the landscape change in front of your eyes, from mountains to coastal vistas and rolling countryside. Bring a picnic, or head to the buffet carriage to enjoy lunch with a view. If you fancy a touch of luxury, you can upgrade to first class to make the experience extra special. Once you arrive, you'll generally find yourself right in the heart of the city, making it easy to get to your accommodation quickly. No messing about with baggage reclaim or taxis required. There are loads of different ways to sort out your travels in Europe, and if you don't want to deal with organizing all the tickets, Eurail/Interrail passes, seat reservations, supplements and more. Here's the description of how to travel around Europe by train. Let's start. How to travel Europe by train, step-by-step trip guide. If you're confused, concerned, or just slightly intimidated by train travel in Europe but are ready to book your first journey. Generally, for long or inter-country journeys, booking online is the easiest option as it is already outlined. People use and recommend Omio for booking train tickets in Europe. Make sure your ticket is in hand. This can mean downloaded onto your phone or printed onto a piece of paper in your hand. Either way works in most places, but whichever you choose, make sure you have it handy. Most major European cities are home to more than one train station, so be sure to double and triple check that you're going to the right one before you set off. Much like in an airport, your first step to finding your train platform will be to check the, often large, sometimes confusing, boards bearing destinations and times. It's best to search for your train based on a combination of the train number, company, and departing time, not the destination. If you have a paper ticket, you'll need to validate it before you board. The kiosks are generally placed just before you reach the platform, but can sometimes be easy to miss if you're not looking for them. In some trains, this will mean storing your luggage in the racks provided at the ends of each train car. In others, it will mean in the racks above the seats, and in still others, there are even places to store bags between the seats. Once you've found your seat and stored your luggage, it's finally time for the best part of train travel in Europe, kicking back and enjoying watching the world go by. How to receive your tickets to travel Europe by train. Once you buy your tickets, the next step is to actually receive them. Most European train tickets these days can be received online and downloaded to your phone. When available, this is by far the easiest and quickest way to receive your tickets. You can also choose to receive your paper tickets at the station you're departing from, either by purchasing them there as mentioned above or by picking up tickets you bought online. In most cases, there's no real reason to pick up paper tickets you bought online as opposed to simply downloading them, but most countries do still have the option. If you book tickets to travel Europe by train well in advance of your trip, most countries do also have a home delivery option where they can be mailed to you before you travel. People take advantage of this for their very first multi-country trip to Europe and have their train tickets for their overnight route from Krakow to Budapest mailed to their then home in San Antonio or anywhere else. Honestly, it is complete overkill, even as the novice travelers they are then, and they don't necessarily recommend doing this, but most places do have the option available. Different kinds of train travel in Europe. When discussing train travel in Europe, it's important to remember that not all trains are created equal, or exist for the same purpose. Metros, aka subways, though some do run above ground, are public transportation used by a certain city. While they are technically trains, metros are their own category entirely, and this Europe train guide doesn't cover them any further. Commuter rails and regional trains aren't exactly synonymous, but for the purposes of this guide, they're similar. These are slower-moving trains used to connect surrounding villages to a major city, for example, Versailles to Paris, or trains that go within a certain country or region, for example, from Siena to Florence in Tuscany. High-speed trains that cover long distances within a country, for example, from Rome to Venice, or cross borders, for example, from Paris to Amsterdam. Since each country runs its own train system, often with a national carrier option and private carriers mixed in, booking a ticket between countries may mean changing train companies at a city near the border. tourist trains that, while technically public transportation, are typically used as tourist attractions for sightseeing purposes, and are priced accordingly. Think the Glacier Express in Switzerland or the Jacobite steam train, aka Harry Potter train, in Scotland. Technically, sleeper trains aren't their own category, they're just long-distance trains with sleeper carriages in them, but they're worth calling out separately in this guide to train travel in Europe because they're particularly interesting for travelers. Train travel in Europe isn't available everywhere. As you move further into Eastern Europe and the Balkans, train travel becomes much less prevalent. Even popular Dubrovnik isn't connected to the rest of Europe by rail, and when it does exist, can take longer and be less comfortable than planes or even buses depending on the destination. Generally, these are planned in advance, so you'll know what you're getting into before arriving, but they can be a bit of a hassle. We've had trips to both Italy and France impacted by rail strikes in the past. Lifting and storing luggage, navigating small staircases and bathrooms, and making your way through crowded train stations, especially with a short connection. We once had to literally sprint through the station to make a connecting train on time in Germany. Can be difficult if you struggle with mobility, so keep that in mind when deciding whether to travel Europe by train. Train travel in Europe is generally far more comfortable than flying. At the end of the day, traveling Europe by train is immensely more comfortable than flying. There's less hassle, more comfortable seats, more ease of moving around, often better views, and more control over your environment. If all else, price, time, etc., were equal, we'd personally choose to take a train across Europe over a plane any day of the week. When you first set out to travel Europe by train, you may assume that it is more affordable than flying, but thanks to a combination of several factors, including incredibly inexpensive budget flight carriers in Europe, that's actually not the case. Typically, it's cheaper to hop a budget flight between two major European cities than take a train. The severity of the difference, though, can vary dramatically, and there are lots of tips you can apply to your train travel in Europe to mitigate the cost. For example, when traveling from Paris to Venice, a route we recently traveled by train, the train can easily take upwards of 10 hours, while the flight time is under 2 hours. Now, that doesn't account for getting to and from the airport, checking luggage, or going through security, all of which increase the amount of time a flight actually takes, but it's still a large difference. Most train stations are in the center of the city. In people's opinion, this is one of the biggest benefits to train travel in Europe. While most airports, especially airports servicing budget flights, are located far outside the city centers, train stations are generally located right in the heart of the action. Step outside the train station in Cologne, for example, and you'll be looking at the cathedral. In Florence, you'll arrive less than a 10-minute walk from the Duomo. In some places, like in Milan, Antwerp, and Paris Gare de Lyon, the opulent central train station is practically a tourist destination in its own right, so you'll be exploring the minute you arrive, rather than spending hours getting into the city center from the airport. No one is going to weigh your luggage or make sure it is only a certain size on a train, so you can bring whatever you like, sports equipment and sometimes pets included. Is train travel in Europe right for you? Planes, trains, buses, rental cars, river cruises, with plenty of transportation options for getting around Europe. How do you know if train travel is for you? For most of the people who hail from other places, this is the number one reason to book that first train in Europe, right? Traveling by train through Europe tops plenty of bucket lists around the world, and for good reason. It's an incredibly fun way to explore the continent. For some routes, especially those with fixed ticket prices, more on that in another section of this Europe train guide, traveling by train allows you to be spontaneous, coming and going from destinations with much less foresight than is required when taking planes. If you have daydreamed about staring out train windows in Europe as you watch mountains, streams, seas, villages, castles, and vineyards go by, let you know, that's pretty much exactly what it's like a lot of the time. Obviously, not everywhere on the continent is scenic, but if you travel Europe by train, you're likely to experience some truly incredible views along the way. Who is this guide to train travel in Europe for? If you're planning an epic, multi-destination trip and are hoping to travel by train through Europe but aren't already comfortable with train travel on the continent, then this guide to traveling by train across Europe is for you. We grew up in suburbs in the USA, and until we started traveling internationally in adulthood, currently at almost 4 years of full-time travel and counting, we had virtually never taken a train. And while that's certainly not the case for many people around the world, it is for lots of the readers who grew up in similar environments to us. If you're excited to travel Europe by train but are learning the whole process from scratch like we once did, you're exactly who we wrote this guide for. While train travel in Europe isn't exactly the same everywhere, with over 50 countries and therefore over 50 train systems, there are plenty of quirks based on location. This guide to train travel in Europe will give a solid overview that will help you start your travels with confidence. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.